The goal of this work was always to create an intentionally inclusive environment for everyone.
To have conversations like this where it's okay to say things that are uncomfortable.
As I look at you guys being what we call the business unit champions, you're there kind of getting the pulse of what's happening in your respective business units, and then using that sense, that information, that learning to say, how do we get better? How do we better perfect kind of the work that we're doing and getting that input? And so, Sean, as I think about Mississippi, and you talked about it, all the principle-centered leadership activities that are going on, and how does that support, reinforce, kind of inform, shape kind of how we do this, how this work is played out and understood in Mississippi?
Right, I think because PCL is so established, it is important, at least from a messaging standpoint, to show how our values, Southern's values, and intentional inclusion are complementary to that, yeah. Right? So for example, synergy is a big part of PCL, and that really is about intentional inclusion. It's about getting everything out of the employee that you can, right? It's about belonging, it's about creativity, all of that. And to paraphrase Covey, he said, valuing the differences is the key to synergy, right? That's the key to inclusiveness. And so I think it is a benefit, very much a benefit to where we're trying to go. Again, I mentioned the structure. We already have these PCL committees that are ready. They're facilitators, they're trained, they know how to deliver messages. It's just a question of refining a message in the way that does appeal to everyone. So to draw on the theme that we've all heard, the thing I'm looking forward to and continuing is the intentional inclusive component and showing why it applies to everyone, right? It is not just a racial thing.
Right.
It spans the effort of our enterprise. So for example, it's a business critical function, right? When we think about the world we're in, the competition for talent, the competition for markets, inclusion is a part of that. There is a business case. Yes, there's a right thing component to it, but there's also a right business thing component to it. And that's what I'm excited about.
No, absolutely. And you've been a lawyer, and you've seen recent rulings out of the Supreme Court and how those things court cases are being interpreted. I mean, one of the things I say a lot is that the work that we're doing is not political. We're going to do it the right way, but we're doing work that's it's how to making sure we're providing fairness and equity and opportunity for each one of our employees.
Right.
And yeah, we're doing things the right way. Is that your take, man, as you see the work that we're doing?
It is my take. I do think we're being intentional about doing it the right way, and we're being intentional about including everyone. So you referenced the Supreme Court, right? I can't help but bite on that, right? So,
well, that's why I did it.
Right? I think you had some intention there, right?
I had some intention,
So if you're going to the Students for Fair Admissions case, right, where basically the Supreme Court ended race-based admissions processes at Harvard and UNC. So to level set that, what they were doing was lawful. They were considering race in their admissions process. And so with any court case, it was lawful until it wasn't, right? It's very different for us. We do not engage in race-based decisions around hiring. We have very specific laws around that. What I think the court did, though, how it impacted us, is sort of the message that it sent, right? For those that aren't court followers, what they saw out of it was, DE&I is about discrimination, right? If you're looking for a negative context, that was the negative message you could get from that. But if you do strip away the politics, and you do look at what the court was really saying, you actually have two very valid arguments going on that are going on within our society as well. One is equality, and one is equity, right? And you really can't have one without the other. It's just where the majority placed the emphasis.
Absolutely.
That's my take.
And so, well, thank you. No, thank you for that legal perspective. Chris, let me ask you a question. One of the things we did when we changed our values and inserted, and with a lot of research and work that was done by a number of employees in this company to come to redo our values. And so now we do this values moment. And so, we have a safety briefing, safety moment, and we have a values moment that provides the opportunity to kind of identify and speak to kind of the elements that are in our values. And so my thing is, I think it's so important for our values not just to be a poster on the wall, but it's dynamic, it lives, it breathes, it's a part of the work that we do each and every day. Give me your sense on kind of on the values moment. You know, how to do it, how to make sure that we're doing it in a way that people understand it, that it kind of helps reinforce the importance of our values. Give me your reaction to kind of the work that we're doing now around our values.
Well, starting meetings in that manner is really in the DNA of Southern Nuclear, so it's not that foreign to us. I'm sure if you've been to some nuclear meetings, you've heard a lot of 5-minute drivers.
Right.
We start every meeting that way, you know, not only with safety, but a 5-minute driver to talk about leadership and really how to have effective teams. And so, to me, the values moment really fits right in with that 5-minute driver concept. It's starting the meeting in a way where we all take a minute to just focus on what's important, why we're here, what our underlying objectives are, so that we can then all be on the same page moving forward. And I really love that inclusion became one of our stated values. You know, like I said earlier, I think it's always been under the surface. If you look at the VOE results, at least at our part of the company and probably throughout, people say the number one thing that they love about working at this company is the person standing next to them, right? People love working with other people at the company. That's the best part of it all. And so it's wonderful to see that captured in our values and to have a platform to set up those uncomfortable conversations and to make it more comfortable for our leaders to walk people through what that really means and making sure that everyone at the table feels represented.
Yeah. Terry, your comments on our values moment.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love our values. And when I made the move to the company, as I talked about before, the first thing that I noticed when I sat down, I turned my computer on, and right in front of me was our values. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's our guide in terms of how we go about our business. And so reading them, I was like, man, these are great. But the thing that I came to appreciate the most was that we operate by our values. You know, that's how we go about our business. And so the change that we made in terms of adding intentional inclusion, I thought it was fantastic because we got to have everybody feeling like they belong, feeling like they are welcome, being respected. All of those things are key to us having success, operating as one team. I'm a former athlete, and so, you know, I know that teams that are successful are the ones that actually work together. Everybody, they understands their role. They value the roles of the other players, similar to what Misty talked about earlier. So I'm really excited about the fact that we made the change, but then also having it as an our values moment puts it front and center with our employees. Every time we meet, you know, it really sets the table in terms of this is what we're all about, and this is how we should go about our business.
Yeah, I just think it's so important that we do these moments to remind ourselves about our values and for it not just to be a poster on the wall. I mean, that's one of the things I so worry about because I've seen it happen so often. It just becomes a poster on the wall and you keep seeing it, but you see it so often you begin to ignore it. And my thing is I want to make sure that we keep these values alive inside of our company. Misty, you said something earlier about things that are happening in our communities and chaos and challenges and differences and difficulties that our communities, that we're witnessing.
Right.
And so, you know, I believe that we don't live in a world today where when employees kind of come to this turnstile or they come to the office or come to work, that they leave those things on the street.
That's right.
They bring those things with them.
That's right.
And so how does this, I guess, conversations, this work, this focus help people kind of as they bring those things to work to where we can talk about them and help understand, also help better understand each other? Give me your reaction to that.
Yeah, I know, Chris, I've heard you say it several times, right? Our company is a microcosm of the world around us. And so the reality is we are in fragile times. There are a lot of those outside forces that I referenced earlier that people bring and carry with them inside. But that's why this work matters more than ever. And it's why it's, you know, important to stay the course, because even as we look across the landscape and we see other businesses that are maybe second guessing the return on investment on this work and maybe even pulling back or slowing down in some of this work, we're not. And we're not. And it's what I love most about this company is we've always been bigger than our bottom line, right? We don't need a business case to justify respecting and including people and creating the environments where they can be seen, valued, and do their best. So I'm like Terry, thrilled that we're continuing this work. I think we don't take our foot off the gas, and I think the work in front of us is just to make sure that everyone sees their part in it.
So, and Terry said it earlier in terms of, because I do think we have to continue to communicate and demonstrate that we're not backing off in any way. Our commitment to moving to equity is just as strong now as it was in 2020. So communications, I think, is a big part of that. What else must we be doing to make sure employees understand our deep commitment to this work?
So as leaders, Chris, we also have to create a culture of psychological safety. And that's something that I think we're starting to talk about more, and I've seen more around this in the last couple of years, right? Fostering an environment where folks feel safe. They know they're not afraid that they're going to be rejected, that they're going to be embarrassed because they're bringing a different viewpoint, because they have a question or they have an experience that they want to share. So that's the additional work I see ahead of us. And when we cultivate that kind of culture, when we draw out people's ideas, when we're intentionally and thoughtfully listening, when we're encouraging people to be curious, that's when we develop the psychological safety that's needed so that everyone can fully participate in this work.
Yeah. Christy, your thoughts on kind of how we make sure this people feel and know that our deep commitment to this work and that it continues?
Well, like Misty said, I think first of all, we don't stop. You know, we keep doing what this company's been doing for decades and investing in our communities and in our people. And then on the internal facing component, I think making sure that our people don't feel that helping create fairness for one group doesn't diminish another group. You know, that's not what we're setting out to do here. It's really about everyone. It's about one team. It's about all people having those same opportunities. And I think it's really important that people not feel left out of the opportunities that we have in front of us. And so I think to the extent that we as leaders continue to be inclusive, if we are intentionally inclusive of everyone at the table, then we're going to accomplish that goal.
Sean, any comments from you on what more we must do to demonstrate our deep commitment to this work?
I think that we are doing the work, but I really do think we need to emphasize the message of inclusiveness, right? And to demonstrate it through creating the safe spaces that you talked about, but safe spaces for those that disagree as well, right? And that's an important component of bringing folks along. There's an interesting insight, I think, in the voice of the employee, right? So I think roughly 86% of our employees say that Southern's an awesome place to work. But we don't get that same level of positive response when we talk about feeling safe to speak my mind at work. And we know that we're seeing some groups, especially some among your white males, who feel like they can't say what's on their mind. We have to be intentional about drawing out those conversations.
You know, one of the things I've gotten as you raised that, I've gotten it from a number of employees, particularly white males, saying, I'm afraid to say the wrong thing.
Right.
And my response to that is, I don't want you to use that as a reason to be silent. Okay? I mean, I think we all have to have a voice in this conversation, and so don't use that to be silent. And so, I mean, how do we approach that? How do we create? Is it a teaching moment? Is it a learning moment? What opportunity does that present to us to create that comfort for everybody to be engaged in this conversation, even though you may have a different perspective and a different view of the work?
Look, I think it has to start with the leaders.
Yeah.
And part of it is being able to say we don't have all the answers. I think part of it can also be to point out as a leader where I don't fully agree with everything and I'm working through it, right? I mean, look, me personally, as I'm sitting here today, my thoughts on this are evolving, right?
Right.
But I'll give you, it just by coincidence, I talked to two different groups last week. It was our DE&I council and PCL councils, and I talked to a Young Learning to Lead group. Mm-hmm. And I put the question to them, is there DE&I fatigue? Do we have issues with the work or is it with the message? And nobody wanted to raise their hand. One white gentleman raised his hand, and basically, I'll paraphrase, but he said, look, the message that we hear outside is reflected in some of the language we have inside. And it makes me feel like we're trying to move away from white employees. That was brave, right? It was brave of him to say that. And it resulted in some really good conversation that came after it. So
hopefully you're able to dispel that belief, that feeling that, that was expressed.
I was, and I did it in two ways. One, I analogized what we're trying to do to the evolution of Major League Baseball, right?
Yeah.
1947 was not the beginning of diversity, it was simply the beginning of the end of discrimination in that sport.
Absolutely.
And after that, MLB really took a very intentional approach. It wasn't all altruistic, right? But it competed. It competed within MLB and we competed in other sports. And by the mid-1970s, you saw a sport that largely reflected the demographics of the United States. Now it's probably transcended it. MLB doesn't have a racial quota. It has a talent quota, right? Southern's not different in that respect. We are competing. We are looking for talent.
Absolutely.
The message behind our numbers and the numbers we track, they're not just about race, right? They're measuring the impact of our efforts in our communities and internally. And I think that resonated. It might not have resolved every issue that people had in that room, but it was a well-received conversation, and it's one that I'm probably going to continue using.
You know, and building on that, I was reading some clips just today, and I did not pay attention to it. It just got past me. But the comments from some people about the Lift Every Voice and Sing, which is the Black national anthem being sung at the Super Bowl, and there's been some commentary that why was that shouldn't have happened, I guess what it says is that's this diverse world we live in, and how we have to listen and understand, explain, reflect as about things that occur and things that we do, you know. But that one caught me by surprise when I saw some of that feedback about that being sung. So where do we go from here? Where do we pivot other than staying the course? You know, I guess we've touched on what more that needs to be done, but guys, in these last couple of minutes, give me some advice and feedback about what is it I need to be doing more of, or just overall as a company, what more we need to do in this space.
Yeah. Well, again, I think we're headed in the right direction. I do think, and we've touched on it, you know, the importance of this work and the impact that it has on our business. Mm-hmm. I think we got to tell those stories so people can really understand that, hey, we're not just doing this because it's the right thing to do, and we are doing it because it's the right thing to do, but we're also doing it because it's a great business decision. And so the more stories that we can tell about how this work connects to our bottom line and what we do every day, I think the better off we'll be.
Misty.
I love the vulnerability that Sean described earlier, right? I think we lean into it all the way.
How do we create more of that?
You know, you celebrate it when it happens, you recognize it, you acknowledge it, but I really liked what Sean said around leaders taking that first step too. And one thing that resonated with me that you said, Sean, was every one of us is working through something in this space too, right? And so we continue to expand our understanding and our view of what this work is about. We accept and acknowledge that everyone has a role in this work, and everyone brings a beautiful story or a lived experience to share, and we leverage all the resources that we know that are already in place to do it.
Christy?
You know, I think tapping into the concept of teaching and coaching for our leaders is really important here. Setting that example, having the courage to have the difficult conversations. I think one of the things that we've probably seen is, you know, not all leaders feel equipped to have these conversations. I think we could do more in the area of building that credibility with those leaders. You don't have to have a minority status. You don't have to, you know, come from a particular background in order to credibly lead a conversation on inclusion. And I think people sometimes are afraid that they might say the wrong thing or that they don't have something relevant to say, and that's not true. And so I think the more that we can do to equip our leaders with confidence in having conversations around inclusion and less fear would be an excellent direction for us to go.
Yeah. Sean?
Wow, she said it better than I could.
She said it very well.
She did. That's the direction I was headed to. I'll offer one other observation, I guess. We have intentional inclusion, we have DE&I, we have Boldly Forward, we have Move to Equity. I'm not sure our employees really are able to distinguish among those things. I'm not sure, let me rephrase, simplifying our message ought to be something we think about. At least that's my opinion.
Yep. No, I think you're right. I mean, that's a good point, and that's why it's important to have these conversations. Guys, thank you so very much. I mean, this has been so delightful. This has been so enjoyable. And I thank you for participating with me today on LunchTable. Everybody, thank you very much for watching this session, this segment of LunchTable. Hopefully there's something here that will help you and inspire you, and also know that this work that we're doing around moving to equity, that we're deeply committed to it, and that is ongoing, and we're going to continue this work forever. So let me conclude by saying thank you for all that you do. Continue to be safe, take care of yourselves, but also take care of each other. Thank you very much.